Jeen and Sunny Han were two peas in a pod. When they went to school, teachers couldn't tell them apart, so Jeen had bangs, while Sunny wore her hair long. After growing up in an abusive household as children, the two sisters would often argue and fight with each other. Despite all of their internal issues, the two sisters became co-valedictorians in high school. However, after Jeen got kicked out of the Air Force and Sunny fell on hard times, the two sisters found each other again and moved in together. It was far from ideal though, as both sisters fought and argued constantly. After Sunny was released on a fraud charge, she went to the police and got Jeen arrested for fraud as well. Feeling betrayed by her own flesh and blood, Jeen was hell-bent on revenge and she would do anything to get it. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Sunny and Jeen Han were both born in 1974 in South Korea. Their mother, Boo-jun Kim, had her fair share of trauma as a child. As a baby, North Korean troops occupied her city. Her father abandoned the family to run off with a younger woman, leaving Kim's mother to raise 6 children by herself. As Kim's own marriage fell apart, she moved her twin daughters to Southern California, moving from job to job, boyfriend to boyfriend, while dealing with a heavy gambling addiction. In the Asian American community, strength and self-discipline are prioritized, so admitting any mental health issues is seen as a sign of weakness. As a result, Kim ignored her mental health problems and only sunk deeper into her own depression. Kim worked as a bar hostess for her income, where she would gamble her money away at casinos for days at a time, resulting in Sunny and Jeen being placed in and out of group homes. Despite all the issues at home, the sisters had each other. They were eventually sent to live with their aunt and uncle in Campo, California, where they both went to Mountain Empire High School. In spite of their outside appearance, they often argued behind closed doors. When they were 15, one fight between them resulted in Sunny stabbing Jeen in the thigh. Jeen Buchanan, a family friend, saw similar problems with balance in both twins. They didn't know the difference between wants and needs, because half of the time, they didn't have what they needed, so their wants got out of control. Even with all these problems, the two sisters were named co-valedictorians. Sunny earned a full scholarship to the University of Laverne after high school. Jeen wasn't ready to go to college, so she enlisted in the Air Force, beginning basic training in Lackland, Texas. 1 month into her Air Force training, it was clear that the strict environment wasn't for her. She began to panic as she didn't have any freedom or a support network in Texas. She felt like a failure compared to her sister. She was stuck in Texas as she had signed a 2-year contract to the Air Force. She finally came up with a desperate solution. During the 90s, there was a don't ask, don't tell law that didn't prohibit gays, lesbians, or bisexuals from serving in the military as long as they didn't reveal their sexual orientation. Jeen told her commanding officer that she was gay so she could get a general discharge, but her lie was met with intense blowback by the Air Force. Jeen called one of her high school friends, Charlene Mitchell, frightened about the repercussions. "They're going to put me in jail," she cried to her friend. Charlene calmed Jeen down and talked to her commander over the phone, and then the Air Force let Jeen go without any consequences. Sunny, however, was in college at the University of Laverne, and she drove between classes in an expensive BMW, being dressed in high-end designer clothes and makeup. She also had a boyfriend and plenty of friends, furthering the perception that she was doing better than her twin sister. After Jeen got into the Air Force, she got a job as a blackjack dealer at the Barona Resort and Casino in Lakeside. The casino allowed off-duty employees to play at the tables, and one night, Jeen placed a bet. After playing her first couple hands of blackjack, her tip earnings from that shift were gone. She ran to the ATM and withdrew $300, and she lost that too. She was so upset that she waited until the bank opened the following morning and withdrew $4,000, her entire savings, and lost all of it. By 1996, her gambling addiction, the same one that affected her mother, caused her to betray her family and friends. In total, she stole about $40,000 in the form of fake checks and credit cards. Once she was faced with an enormous amount of debt, she tried to commit suicide by overdosing on sleeping pills combined with liquor. She survived though. Her uncle, who had taken Jeen and Sunny in during high school, realized that Jeen had stolen $10,000 from him and he called the police. Jeen was tracked down to a friend's house and arrested. She was sentenced to 10 days in jail with 3 years probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to the people that she scammed. When she got out of jail, her only option was to reach out to Sunny, who told her she could come live with her in her Orange County apartment. The twins would be reunited again. Contrary to Jeen's perception, Sunny's life after high school wasn't as great as she was letting on. Jeen had trouble keeping up with the other friends in college, as most of them came from rich families, and she felt the pressure to look and act the way they did. Eventually, her friends suspected that she was working as an exotic dancer. As she continuously struggled to keep up with her rich friends, her grades continued to slip, enough to the point where she lost her scholarship, blaming the situation on a breakup with her boyfriend. She later returned to her studies at a local community college, but she wasn't able to get back to her former academic level. Eventually, she dropped out of community college and told friends she was working as a receptionist to support herself. At first, the thought of the sisters moving in together was exciting, sort of a rekindling of their high school glory. But soon it turned sour. The sisters argued constantly. Sunny would kick Jeen out several times for not doing the dishes or not making her food right. In May 1996, the police were called to the apartment as a result of a violent fight between the two. Jeen expected to be arrested, but Sunny was taken to jail instead. To her surprise, 3 years earlier, Sunny had stolen her friend's credit card and went on a $1,300 shopping spree. The receipts showed that she purchased high-end lingerie, designer jeans, shoes, and sunglasses. Sunny was given a fine and placed on probation. When questioned by the police, she told the authorities, "I didn't think my friend would mind. She was rich." Wow. Now with Sunny in jail, things went into a tailspin. Sunny called Jeen from jail and scolded her, saying, "As soon as I get home, I'm going to kick you out." Knowing that she had nowhere else to go, she seized the opportunity. Jeen took her sister's wallet, ID, credit card, and the keys to her BMW. She withdrew cash from Sunny's bank account and used her telephone cards to place calls. She then drove her sister's BMW to her ex's house in San Diego, staying with him for a few days. She also stole checks from him, and he called the police on her. When Sunny was released, she also pressed charges against Jeen for fraud. Jeen was sent to jail and given a work furlough, with 5 hours a day to leave the facility. It was during this work release that Jeen fled and ended up in an apartment with two sisters called Nikki and Rita. After feeling betrayed by her sister, she was hell-bent on revenge. Yes, the same sister that you stole money from, and her car, and her wallet, and her credit cards, but okay. Archie Bryant was a local teenager who stayed at Nikki and Rita's place. He had grown up in San Diego during the crack epidemic of the 1980s, where his dad coached him to lie during social service inspections and his stepdad stole the money he earned selling candy in the neighborhood. Archie remembered waking up to intense headaches as a child from accidentally inhaling crack fumes overnight in the motel he was staying at. His best friend was a 15-year-old Laotian American named Jonathan Sayarath, and the two looked out for each other like brothers. Archie noticed a blue Mustang new to the neighborhood, and after inquiring about the owner, he was introduced to Jeen, who was 6 years older than him. Archie wasn't sexually attracted to Jeen, as he said she talked with a Valley girl accent and seemed a little crazy, but the air of danger that surrounded her was irresistible to him. The two began to hang out, and at one point, he showed her an accidental gunshot wound to his foot. Jeen became even more interested as now she knew Archie had access to guns. She asked him if he could find her a gun for self-defense. Archie went to a female cousin and secured a 2-shot Derringer. Jeen paid $60 for the pistol, with Archie pocketing $10 as his finder's fee. One day, Archie and Jonathan were running late to school. They asked Jeen to give them a ride, and she saw her opportunity. She instead suggested they take an hour-long drive to Irvine with her, as she needed to swing by her sister's house to pick up some things. The young teens were naive, as this was a chance to skip school and hang out with the cool adult. Archie would later say, "I didn't care about missing school, I had no parents to answer to." To sweeten the deal, Jeen offered them both $100. The boys hopped in the Mustang, unaware that they had been dragged into a murder plot. As they drove, Jeen made up stories about Asian gangsters assaulting her in Irvine, and that these same gangsters might be in the way of getting her things back from her sister's place. Archie began to feel protective over his friend, and Jeen realized that, asking him, "Have you ever knocked someone out?" When they got to Irvine, they went to a grocery store and bought duct tape, gloves, and a potato. If the boys questioned the purchases, Jeen would say it was due to the threat of the Asian gangsters. But they didn't, as they both trusted her. The trio then headed to San Joaquin Marsh, a 300-acre nature reserve. Archie fixed the potato onto the barrel of the pistol he bought from his cousin. He fired the gun, as the potato was an effective makeshift silencer. When later asked why he shot the gun with the potato attached, Archie replied, "Name one teenage boy who wouldn't use that opportunity to shoot a gun. There was no deep-seated conspiracy. I was just a kid being a kid taking advantage of the moment." Afterwards, they drove to the San Marco apartments where Sunny lived. The three watched as one of Sunny's roommates left through the front door. Jeen went to the leasing office and pretended to be her sister needing an extra key, but that didn't work, so they needed another way inside. Jeen told the boys again they would only get the money if she got her things. "It's better you take the gun," she told them. Archie was starting to get uncomfortable, thinking to himself why they needed a gun in the first place. Then Jeen upped the ante. "Okay, so then what if you just kill her? Have you ever killed anyone?" "What? No," Archie said. He was really confused now, as an easy errand to pick up someone's belongings had turned into a murder for hire. Would you kill my sister? Jeen said. Archie quickly refused. Jeen rolled her eyes and turned to Jonathan, asking him the same question, but he shook his head. Jeen then snapped, furiously hitting the steering wheel numerous times with the palm of her hands. The teens worryingly exchanged glances. Archie later explained it was a look that meant, "This bitch is crazy." But then he thought to himself, if she was willing to kill her own sister, why wouldn't she kill me? In a quick decision, Archie took the gun from the glove box. Jeen, who thought she had successfully manipulated the boys, took this as a sign that Archie would fulfill her request. She started psychotically clapping and cheering with happiness. But Archie had a different plan in mind. He not only wanted to keep himself and Jonathan safe, he wanted to protect the target of Jeen's aggressions, her sister. However, this would involve using the gun to scare the women. Maybe if they followed Jeen's instructions but didn't hurt anyone, she would leave them alone. Archie turned to Jeen and said, "You get your stuff, I get my money. Nobody gets hurt." Jeen later discussed the plan she had. "I told the boys to falsely pose as magazine salesmen and go to my sister's door to see if she was home alone. She sat in the car while the boys went to the front door. I asked the boys to barge inside of her apartment, threaten her with the gun, tie her up with the plastic twine I purchased. Then I asked them to put the duct tape over my sister's mouth so she wouldn't be able to scream for help." Wait, what are you doing in this whole situation? Archie knocked on the door asking Helen Kim, 19, a roommate of Sunny's, if she wanted to purchase some magazines. Helen said no and closed the door. Archie ran back to the parked Mustang. "She seems like she's home alone," he told Jeen, thinking Helen had been Jeen's sister. "Does she look like me?" "I'm not sure," he replied. "Go back and check again," Jeen demanded. Archie went back, but no one came to the door this time. The boys were hungry, so Jeen took them to get a burger. At 3 o'clock, they returned to the apartment. Helen, who was playing a Nintendo game, heard another knock at the door. She leaned out of the doorway again, this time noticing Jonathan leaning up against a wall behind Archie. She declined the magazines again, but before she could shut the door, the two teenagers forced their way inside. Archie pointed the gun at Helen's head, ordering her to shut up and sit down on the ground. Thinking this must be the twin sister and that no one else was home, he told the sobbing girl, "If you shut the fuck up, you'll be alright." As he had been instructed, Jonathan tied her hands with the plastic twine and placed a strip of duct tape over her mouth. By now, Archie heard a commotion from elsewhere in the apartment. Sunny was hopping out of the shower when she heard a racket from the other room. She called the cops on her cell phone, telling dispatch to hurry. Then she heard one of them yell at Helen, "Where's your roommate?" Archie instructed Jonathan to watch Helen while he inspected the other rooms. As he entered the bathroom, he saw the cell phone in Sunny's hand. Placing the gun against her head, he asked her if she called the police. She lied and said no. He placed the gun down and began bounding and gagging her as well. He asked Jonathan to hand over more tape as he started wrapping her entire head. She pleaded with him to leave her nose unwrapped so that she could breathe. By this point, Helen managed to get her hands loose from the twine and dash for the door. "I should shoot you for that," Archie warned Helen. Jonathan tied her up again. The boys acted like hardened criminals, but they were both scared out of their minds. "Everything I did that night, I learned from TV and the movies," Archie later said. The terrified women were moved to the bathtub and sat head to head, rocking themselves back and forth. In the other room, Archie started rummaging through their belongings in search of Jeen's things. Jeen waited outside on pins and needles. Like, why are you not getting involved? This doesn't make any sense. Jonathan ran out to tell Jeen it was safe to come in, but then red and blue flashing lights flooded the area. Jeen watched the frantic scene unfold from her car. "I saw one of the officers walking towards my car while I was sitting in the driver's seat in the parking lot. Immediately, I got nervous. I thought the police were there for me." Jonathan quietly walked back to the car and sat inside while the police officer was approaching. Jeen managed to fake a concerned response. "Is there something wrong, officer?" He asked who she was. Jeen identified herself as Sunny. Still inside the apartment, Archie was unaware that the police were right outside. He pocketed a few items, including a pager and $60 in cash. When he heard police approaching, he began untying the women in the bathtub and instructed them to say that it had all been a big joke. He ran toward the front door, but it was too late. With guns drawn, police officers told him to freeze. He quickly turned, slammed the front door, and started running towards the back. As he scrambled, Archie tossed the gun in a laundry hamper, hiding it underneath the women's clothing. Before he could make it out, a detective on the scene tackled him. Later on, when the police searched the premises, they found the weapon with the safety off. This convinced some of them that they had stopped a murder. Jeen, meanwhile, told Jonathan to wait inside the Mustang. She got out of her car and headed straight for the crime scene. Instead of leaving the scene, she later recalled, "I followed the same officer around the building. By the time she reached the apartment, police officers pointed guns at a closed door. The victims had told the police there was more than one assailant. It wasn't until the officers told her to leave the scene that she went back to the car. As she and Jonathan drove from the complex, she gazed upwards at the rearview mirror. I saw my sister coming out of the apartment, Jeen recalled, trying to take tape out of her hair. I had a lot of mixed emotions going through me at the time, a lot of conflicting emotions, but any guilt she felt was gone as the pair now sped towards the Mexican border. Back at the San Marco apartment home, a police officer who moments earlier had witnessed a person matching the victim's description walking back to the blue Mustang realized something was very wrong. While the investigation was unfolding, police in El Cajon notified their counterparts in Irvine that a confidential informant had overheard a recently escaped Korean woman tell another inmate how she wanted to kill her twin sister. Archie, who was being interrogated, confirmed to police that Jeen had talked about murdering her sister. Less than an hour after the police arrested Archie, Jeen used Sunny's driver's license as a form of ID to withdraw $5,000 from a bank in Laguna Beach. Jeen then pawned off some belongings in exchange for gold. She also completed a credit application at a Nissan dealer to purchase a 300ZX sports car. She showed the salesman her sister's ID, but the paperwork for the transaction wouldn't be completed that night. Jeen left with Jonathan to return the blue Mustang to the rental agency that she got it from after her release. Officers from the San Diego Police Department were waiting for her. They arrested Jeen, who insisted they had the wrong person and that she was her sister. A quick search of the car uncovered the bullet casing matching the caliber used in the Derringer. It had dropped on the floor mat when Archie had taken the shot from the window with a potato silencer. Officers broke it to Sunny, still shell-shocked from the assault, that her sister was involved. Sunny was stunned. "That's impossible. Jeen's in custody in San Diego County," she maintained, not realizing that Jeen had escaped. In addition to the bullet casing in Jeen's car, police found trash bags, pine saw, twine, and a pair of gloves in the trunk. Her intentions could hardly have been any clearer. Jeen was eventually tried for conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of burglary, possession of a firearm, and 2 counts of false imprisonment. On May 8, 1998, she was sentenced to 26 years in prison. Archie and Jonathan were tried as co-conspirators. The Korean American community banded together to support Jeen during her trial. When the sentence was handed down, community leaders declared that the sentencing was overly harsh, and hundreds of letters of support begged for leniency. Koo Oh of the Korean American Federation of Orange County insisted that fighting with siblings is part of Korean culture. What? While waiting to be transferred to state prison at the Orange County Jail, Jeen began hiding a stash of Tylenol pills that she collected from the jail commissary. 3 days later, after the verdict was announced, Jeen was rushed to the Western Medical Center in Anaheim to have her stomach pumped and survive the overdose. Even after the fallout from the attempted murder, the twins' bond did not disappear. Before the trial, Sunny tried to recant her part in the allegations that Jeen had tried to murder her, despite stacks of evidence. On the second day of Jeen's initial court hearings, when Sunny was due to take the witness stand and testify against her sister, she took 35 sleeping pills. She washed it down with a beer, which she knew she was allergic to. Paramedics rushed her to a nearby hospital and revived her. And both of y'all got problems. In 2017, the parole board read out a letter from Sunny supporting Jeen's release. She thought that Jeen had grown up and served enough time. Additionally, she wanted Jeen to be with their mother Kim, who was suffering from diabetes and supposedly still suffering from a gambling addiction. Archie Bryant declined to take a deal based on principle and served 14 years for first-degree burglary and 2 counts of false imprisonment before being released on parole in 2011. Jonathan signed a confession and only served 4 years. With Jeen receiving parole in 2017, the script had been flipped. Kim now only kept in touch with Jeen, not Sunny. She even bragged that Jeen, the new golden child, received an engineering degree and was working in the San Francisco Bay Area. Sunny was not impossible to track down, but Kim hadn't seemed to look for her. When asked about Sunny's whereabouts, the mother of 2 paused for a long time. "I think Sunny's dead," she finally responded. Wow. Just the fact that nobody died during this is ridiculous. The fact that you manipulated 2 teenage boys to go with you to try to kill your sister, and then you leave Archie in the apartment to take the fall. Like, you're sitting outside of the apartment while they're in there doing your bidding. And the fact that their mother is acknowledging Jeen, even though she tried to kill her sister and served almost 30 years in prison. Oh my God, this story was crazy. Hopefully Sunny's okay wherever she's at. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate everything. Leave a like if you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Also, don't forget to turn on my post notifications if you haven't already. Be safe. Have a great day. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.